2022. Please stand and say the Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, the first item up is to approve the minutes of the Board of Trustees meeting from May 17, 2022. Can I have a motion?
Move to approve the minutes of the village board meeting of May 17, 2022.
Second.
Any changes? Okay, roll call vote.
Trustee Postuma?
Aye.
Trustee Harlow?
Aye.
Trustee Stifler?
Aye.
Trustee Fisher?
Aye.
Trustee Banky?
Aye.
Thank you.
Okay, in President's comments, I'd like to point out that the first phase of the Garfield Street reconstruction project is coming to completion. The next phase is from First Street to Fourth Street. During the second phase, access to the village parking deck will be cut off of Washington as the Garfield entrance will be closed. This phase of the project is anticipated to be completed before school resumes in August. Due to the Garfield Street reconstruction, the 4th of July parade will kick off this year from First Street and Park Avenue at 10 a.m. on Monday, July 4th. The parade will proceed west on First to Grant and then south on Grant to 7th. Returning this year will be the festivities or the festival in Burlington Park immediately following the 4th of July parade. The primary election in the state of Illinois is on June 28th. Village Hall is serving as the Dupage County early voting location for those residents who live in Dupage County through Saturday, June 25th. The hours are Monday through Friday, 8 a.m. to 7 p.m., Saturday from 9 a.m. to 5 p.m., and there'll be no early voting on Sunday. Hinsdale residents who live in Cook County can vote in any suburban Cook County early voting location, including at Brookfield Village Hall, or for commuters at the Union Station or the Cook County Clerk's Office at 69 West Washington Street. I encourage residents to visit the village's website for information on free summer activities hosted by the Parks and Recs Department. That takes us to employee recognition. And Dan Dieter, who's a village engineer, is going to retire at the end of this month, and we'd like to recognize and celebrate Dan Dieter's accomplishments as the village engineer. For the past 13 years, the village has focused on making investments to improving Hinsdale's roads, water mains, and sewers. These projects have been under the planning, supervision, and guidance of Dan. He leaves Hinsdale a much better place than when he arrived. During Dan's tenure, he assisted in developing the village's master infrastructure plan, which we call the MIP. Completed in 2009, the MIP was a 15-year plan that identified key infrastructure needs and provided a framework for how the village would prioritize, schedule, and budget improvements to its infrastructure. Dan was instrumental in organizing and leading the MIP projects. Dan has managed or assisted in over 45 engineering projects in the village of Hinsdale, including the Oak Street Bridge reconstruction, the Woodland Street drainage improvements, which was a 3-phase project, the Brown Mill Condominium Flood Control Project, the East Chicago Avenue Drainage Corridor Project, the North Madison Street Drainage Project, the Chicago Avenue and Hinsdale Avenue Reconstruction Project, the Village Parking Deck, the Central Business District Downtown Repaving, the Tollway Engineering Review, and the Garfield Reconstruction, which is occurring this year. Dan has also been instrumental in securing millions of dollars in federal, state, and county grants to fund many of the village's projects. Dan is also the main point of contact to respond to village residents' questions on infrastructure and drainage issues. He's always been very responsive and genuinely shares the concerns that residents have voiced concerning drainage issues. Dan, we appreciate your many years of service here, and on behalf of the village board and the staff, we wish you best wishes in retirement. Plaque, and congratulations and good luck. I hope to join you soon. recognition. Got a fair number of recognition, and I really thank the people who've served on commissions for many years, and they've re-upped. And so this is a list of people who've decided to be appointed yet again to positions in the various boards. I really appreciate their hard work, and we couldn't do what we do as a village board without their help. I'd like to recommend to the village board the following people. For the Historic Preservation Commission, John Bonin to be reappointed for a 3-year term as chair through April 30th, 2025. Jim Prisby to be reappointed to a 3-year term through April 30th, 2025. Bill Harlow appointed to a 3-year term through April 30, 2025, and that's the Historic Preservation Commission. To the Economic Development Commission, I'd like to reappoint Joe Sunderson to a 3-year term as chair through April 30, 2025. Carrie Fagamani to a 3-year term through April 30, 2025. And to the Plan Commission, I'd like to reappoint Julie Cernovich to a 3-year term through April 30, 2025, and Jim Krillenberger to a 3-year term through April 30, 2025. To the Firefighter Pension Board, I'd like to reappoint Peter Boomer to a 3-year term through April 30, 2025, and Chris Elder to a 3-year term through April 30, 2025. To Parks and Rec Commission, Chris Buroff to a 3-year term through April 30, 2025. And to the Police Pension Board, Don Klink to a 2-year term through April 30, 2025. I'm not sure I could have a 2-year term through 2025.
That's a typo on my part.
Okay, so it's through 2024.
2024,
Okay.
thank you.
Okay, can I have a motion with respect to those appointments to boards and commissions?
Move to approve the appointments to village boards and commissions as recommended by the village president.
Second.
Roll call vote?
Trustee Postuma?
Aye.
Trustee Harlow?
Aye.
Trustee Stifler?
Aye.
Trustee Fisher?
Aye.
Trustee Banky?
Aye.
Also, just one point on this. I think a lot of communities have a hard time filling these boards out, getting volunteers.
Yep.
Thank you to these people for re-upping again.
Yep.
So
Yep.
I think it's incredible.
Yep. So we have citizens petition now. Any resident who wants to speak to anything on or off the agenda, now's the time. What I prefer is if you have something that's on the agenda, it may make sense to talk at that point in time unless you have to leave or have some other commitment. We have another opportunity at the end of the meeting. So anybody wish to speak, any citizen on any matter? Sure. Okay, okay. All right, everybody will get an opportunity. If we miss somebody, just raise your hand and we'll make sure we hear from you. Okay, that takes us to Matt.
Yes. Item 8A, this is a first read for an ordinance changing the hours of dog usage at Catherine Legge Memorial Park. Last fall, there was a discussion of establishing a separate dog park at KLM. While that did not end up going forward, there was a lot of discussion, and during that discussion, neighbors of the park expressed concern about dogs barking early in the morning or late in the evening. And after that came up, dog users said that they liked the idea of having more hours at the park where it was daylight as opposed to darker. And actually, the police department also liked the idea of having the dog park hours during daylight because it would be easier to enforce. So I'm going to go through the hours both currently and as they would be revised under the new ordinance. So there's basically summer and winter hours. The summer hours, which are currently March through October, the morning hours are 5 to 9 a.m. Those are going to get changed, in essence, 1 hour later from 6 a.m. to 10 a.m. And then the evening hours currently are from 7 p.m. to 10 p.m. And then as revised, would be pushed an hour earlier from 6 p.m. to 9 p.m. And then the summer hours would be now April through October. I should mention that as well, as opposed to March through October. And then the winter hours, currently it's November through February. So those hours are currently in the morning, 5 a.m. to 10 a.m. The winter hours are now going to be November through March, going to be starting 1 hour later from 6 a.m. to 10 a.m. And then the evening hours are currently from 5 p.m. to 10 p.m. and are going to be now in the evening starting at 4 p.m. and going until 8 p.m. So basically, starting later in the morning and ending earlier in the evening. The Parks and Rec Commission unanimously recommended that we adopt this as a board. Are there any questions?
Any residents want to speak on the dog park hours? Nope. Okay, put on a consent agenda?
Sounds good.
Okay.
Okay, so the next item we have is item 8B, also first read, and this is to waive competitive bidding and enter into a 3-year contract with Orbis Solutions for information technology services. So Orbis has been providing IT services to the village under a 3-year contract that's going to be expiring in September of 2022. The village has been paying an annual cost of $164,928 a year. That annual fee applied through all 3 years of the contract. The number of servers and computers supported by Orbis has actually increased during the pandemic. Orbis came to us and expressed an interest in renewing the agreement without going through the competitive process. And staff has been pleased with the service that Orbis has been providing. And what has been negotiated is a 3% increase over the previous fee. So the initial first-year fee will be $169,876. And then in the second and third year of the contract, there will be a 3% increase each year. In addition, there used to be a per server and per computer cost element to that, and those will be eliminated and will be included in the flat fee. The agreement itself is substantially similar to the one that was entered into previously, other than the changes in fees mentioned above. Brad, do you have anything else to?
No, Brad Moore from Orbis Solutions is here.
Any questions for our representative?
And the way I understand this is our IT department for the village. And from what I understand, we really need them because, I mean, as all of us know, in this modern day, you can't deal without an IT department. So this is our IT department. And my understanding is we use them, rely on them heavily, particularly for police and fire, which have kind of unique needs for IT. So it's money well spent, particularly since we're satisfied with Orbis's performance. And 3% increase is not something that is, outside of what's reasonable in this environment.
No, that's right. They handle, somebody from Orbis was helping us with the speakers here,
Yeah.
the website, video monitoring, telephone system, all that stuff is handled by Orbis under this agreement.
Yep. So if we put this on the consent agenda? Okay. Okay. So that takes us to EPS. We got 2 items there, and Neil's not here. So you want to take over, George, and talk about
I'll
those?
just tee up the item for the board here. So tonight we have a contract, it's a first read item to award a contract to Christopher Burke Engineering for inspection, design, and construction engineering services for the 2022-2023 standpipe painting and maintenance project in an amount not to exceed $99,902. Just as a brief little background here, Public Services is recommending that the standpipe be re-inspected this year and that we start the development of the engineering specs and bidding documents in preparation for the 2023 painting. The inspection will provide us with a report on the condition of the standpipe and help provide an accurate cost for completion of the painting project, which also includes some additional repairs that we've identified. Back in April, Public Services sent out a formal RFP. We received one back from Christopher Burke Engineering. We reviewed that proposal. They're qualified to do the work. They've done similar projects in many communities in the Chicagoland area. proposal is in an amount not to exceed $99,902. The cost of these engineering services will span over essentially 3 fiscal years. So contained in the staff report is essentially a breakdown of costs per fiscal year for their services. Most of them will be this year and next year, and then there'll be a final inspection report in 2024. This is a turnkey operation where they'll provide us with the inspectional services, the engineering, the bidding, and then the construction engineering to complete the project. There's also a big component of cellular equipment coordination where we have to work with our lease telecommunication companies on removing the equipment and then reinstalling the equipment. That is a process that could take somewhere between 6 to 8 months. Christopher Burke has a lot of experience in coordinating those efforts, so we're glad that they're bidding on this job and that they're able to provide us the services. We did set aside $75,000 for engineering for this project, so this is a little bit over budget. However, we think we could fit it in, given how the project will span over 3 budget years. So we'll be a little bit under this year, and then the balance of the funds will be budgeted in 2023.
So for those of you who don't know, the standpipe is referring to as the water tower at the high school.
Oh, right, yeah, sorry.
Yeah, so I mean, that's the engineering term,
It's the
standpipe,
$2 million.
it's the water
$2
tower.
million gallon standpipe.
And so when we talk about painting the water tower, it's not like 2 guys in a ladder in a truck. I mean, it's much more involved than that because you got to paint the inside of it, which is part of the most important part. And obviously, they call it a standpipe because it creates the water pressure for Hinsdale. So we have to be very careful about taking down the water inside the tower while we repaint it, and then we repaint the exterior. And as you know, we get revenue for the cell antennas on top of that. We have to relocate that for a period of time and reinstall it. So this is something that we've been planning to do for a long time that needs to be done. Overall, as George said, it's about $1 million. But one of the things we were able to negotiate with the tollway is because the water used for the tollway comes from Hinsdale, and because they are like at the outer reaches of the village, water pressure is more important to them than people who are on higher ground or closer to the center of the village. So they're really impacted by water pressure. So we were able to reach an agreement with the tollway that for this $1 million project, they will reimburse us for $500,000. And that's the first $500,000 we spend. So when George talks about this year and next year, to the extent that we spend less than $500,000 or up to, that will be reimbursed by the tollway, and then we will be, have to pay the other $500,000. But this is just one of the many arrangements we reach with the tollway. The tollway appreciates that them expanding the tollway in Hinsdale is problematic for the village, and they understand that we've incurred costs, and this is something that we were able to agree with the tollway that I think is very good for the village. Having them pay $500,000 to help us do this, which we had to do in the next couple years, is very good for us.
Is the engineering part of what's being reimbursed?
Yes.
By the tollway?
Yes.
I believe so, yes.
And we'll obviously bid out separately for the
Correct.
painting itself.
Yep.
Okay.
George, 20-year useful life, that's pretty standard.
Yep. Yeah, it was last painted in 2002, so it was technically scheduled this year, but with COVID and everything kind of got shifted, so we're planning on doing it next year.
We put this on the consent agenda? Okay. All right. George, the second one?
Yes, so we have another item, which is a first read, and this is a scheduled capital improvement item to repair some pillars out here in front of the memorial building. Public Services did seek out proposals to have these large wooden columns repaired, of which we've done one in 2017, and then there's 3 left that need to be repaired. We did receive 3 proposals back. The lowest is from Janet Custom Millwork in the amount of $43,200. They're proposing to replace the 3 column bases, paint them. In addition, some miscellaneous repairs will be done on the shaft of the existing columns. Janet has done work for us before, and they've done very good work. We are recommending that this be completed this year. We are seeing a trend in higher costs related to inflation, so we did budget $35,000 and to repair The 3-column post is about $43,200, which is technically $8,200 over budget. We are planning for the 150th anniversary, so we want to make sure that these look good prior to that, so we're recommending that we do this work this year.
And we were doing like one column a year, which didn't make much sense, so I think it makes sense to do them all. And this actually is really the first time in 13 years, right, where I'm starting to see consistently things over budget. I think that's a function of the inflation, because don't you agree that like in the last 2 meetings, everything we've looked at has been over budget to some extent? And so I think we got to do it, and I think that it makes sense doing all those columns now, but we're just going to have to deal with the inflation issue. So can I put that on the consent agenda? Okay. All right. Okay, Luke.
All right, which moves us to agenda item 8E, and this is an ordinance and a first read for a floor area ratio variance at 307 South Lincoln. The applicant is asking for relief under section 3-1110E3 in order to add a second-story bedroom to the home. The total variance request is for an additional 354 square feet of FAR for a home that was constructed in the 1890s. The property is a conforming lot, which is located in the R4 residential district and is located on the southeast corner of 3rd and Lincoln. The property sits on a lot that is 132 by 166 and is approximately 21,780 square feet. The maximum FAR is 6,356 square feet, and the property is currently maxed at the size due to various additions over the past 100 years. I would know, and do we have a representative here this evening? Thank you. So the ZBA held a public hearing, and the applicant's representative, who's going to speak here tonight, also outlined the history of the historic home and address the issue of hardship. I'd ask the applicant to, spend some time talking about that this evening. I would also like to note here that it's important to note that all of the neighbors within 250 feet of the property were notified via registered mail, and there were no neighbors that were against the variance request. And also, the ZBA did vote unanimously 6-0 to this board to recommend approval of the variance. Before the applicant speaks, this board recently referred Article 14 under the historic preservation onto the Plan Commission for consideration. And basically the merits under the changes that we're proposing under Article 14 would be met here. So if Article 14 is ultimately approved by this board, from which is at Plan Commission right now, it would address situations like we have here, permitting additional FAR for historic homes.
Brad, my wife just texted me that there's no audio for the board meeting, in case somebody besides her is watching. You may want to check that.
Thank you very much. My name is Scott Day. I'm the attorney for Nathan and Natalie Saygesser. They are the owners of this property. I have the privilege of representing their interest. I'm with the firm of Day and Robert PC out of Naperville. The team that's doing this particular project includes down in Naperville, and Dave Necht would be the builder for this particular project. The owner applicant has been previously listed and disclosed. The variance requested, I think, was our subject property. We do have a copy of the survey depicting its location at the intersection of 3rd and Lincoln. Got some photographs from when the Saygessers recently purchased the property. This is the corner view. We also have a bird's eye view of the property, so you can get an orientation of the house, the connector area, and then the garage area that is to the left of this photograph. Looking at an angle view, it really highlights the one-story section, which is targeted for the development of an additional bedroom to serve as the 4th bedroom for the family sleeping suite on the 2nd floor of this property. Existing 2nd floor layout, you can see there in the home plan, there's really only 3 bedrooms there. The master suite is there with 2 bedrooms. They have 3 children. They would like to have the entire family sleeping in the same suite location. Unfortunately, the only way to do that would be to build over the extension that connects over to the garage. That's the for the expansion and the creation of the fourth bedroom. The elevation of the house shows how the elevation would be expanded, very consistent with the historical architecture. This is one of the homes that has been called out by your previous examination as a significant structure in your community. We're very, very lucky here in Hinsdale to have a wealth of historic facilities. This is actually 1894. The Grover Cleveland administration was in office, and this variation request is to avoid partial demolition. The only other way that they could actually proceed with creating this fourth bedroom on this location would be to demolish part of the house. Seems to be counterproductive to history. Summary of the request is the 6356 is the max. That's what's currently situated. Board of Appeals was a unanimous vote to approve with no opposition to the testimony. All of these old historic structures, there's a great deal of fidelity to the architecture and the desire to maintain that architecture. Something very special about Hinsdale. Particular home. It's very difficult to deal with the floor plans from 1894. We didn't live the same way. We didn't function the same way. We didn't even have the same type of lifestyle. Nothing was quite the same. To try to accommodate what I would call a conventional family lifestyle in an old historic structure requires quite a bit of dedication and a willingness to expend additional costs in the process. So that's really where this is. Granting the variation is consistent, we know, with the proposed text amendment currently being considered for removal. I'll be more than happy to answer any questions you may have about the application. Thank you very much.
The only other thing I would emphasize here is we do have standards for variances, which are outlined in section 11503F, and the zoning board of appeals went through all of those standards and found that they were all met. So just for the trustees' understanding.
So under the new ordinance, if adopted, this wouldn't even come to the board.
Right,
Yeah,
right,
correct.
right. We've said that for historic homes, we're not going to have an FAR limitation, right? So as long as there's not a problem with the neighbors, we're going to accommodate that. So this will have to go on second read.
It's zoning, so it has to go on the second read. I would say though, sir, unless you hear from staff, we have a first read tonight. A second read will be next month in July when it's ultimately approved, but you don't need to show up.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Okay, that takes us to consent agenda items. Who had the accounts payable?
I had the accounts payable. Move to approve payment of the accounts payable for the period of May 12th, 2022 through June 8th, 2022 in the aggregate amount of $2,006,133.80 as set forth on the list provided by the village treasurer, of which a permanent copy is on file with the village clerk.
Second.
Roll call vote?
Trustee Postuma?
Aye.
Trustee Harlow?
Aye.
Trustee Stifler?
Aye.
Trustee Fisher?
Aye.
Trustee Banky?
Aye. Okay, goes back to you, Matt.
All right, this is item 10A, second read, and this is to approve the collective bargaining agreement with the Fraternal Order of Police and corresponding changes to the employee manual. The collective bargaining agreement covers all police officers below the rank of sergeant, and the existing agreement expired in April of this year. Village staff has met with union representatives 4 times, and the board has discussed this twice in closed session in March and May. That's why this is a second read. The tentative agreement has now been ratified by the police union in May. A draft agreement has been presented to the board. I'll just go over some of the high-level terms of the new agreement. It's a term of 3 years. It's going to be retroactive to May 1st, 2022. Perhaps the most important element is the salaries. In the first year, there's going to be a 2.5% increase. This is consistent with our budget for this year. In the second year, there will be an increase of 2.75%. And then in the final third year of the contract, there will be a 3% increase. Some of the additional changes that are going to be in the collective bargaining agreement, first of all, there's going to be an additional 8-hour floating holiday. Second, there's going to be a new procedure where if there's a vacancy that's occurring with less than 24 hours notice, there's the ability to be put on a list to sign up to fill those vacancies. The hope is that that will make the whole process of filling those vacancies on short notice much quicker. There's additional detail in the agreement about what counts towards fulfillment of the probationary period for new hires. There's updated insurance language as well. And additionally, there is some additional personnel changes that will go into the employee manual but aren't in the collective bargaining agreement itself. The special leave program is now being expanded to employees who have a newborn or newly adopted child within 30 days after the birth or adoption. And all of these benefit changes will be passed on to our other non-unionized village employees. Does anyone have any questions? Tracy, anything else to add?
Perfect.
All right.
So I'd like to thank the village staff for their hard work on this. I think this is a good agreement from the village's perspective. The terms I look at most are the economic terms, and a 2.5% increase in the first year, 2.75, and a 3% increase in 2024 are, good in this environment, particularly since CPI is now about 8.6%. So I think this is a good agreement, and thanks again for your hard work. So is that a second read, Matt?
Yeah, this is a second read because we discussed it twice in closed session.
Okay. We'll make a motion.
Hearing nothing else, I will move to approve a resolution approving the collective bargaining agreement between the Village of Hinsdale and the Illinois Fraternal Order of Police Labor Council and approve corresponding amendments to the personnel manual.
Second.
Roll call vote?
Trustee Postuma?
Aye.
Trustee Harlow?
Aye.
Trustee Stifler?
Aye.
Trustee Fisher?
Aye.
Trustee Banky?
Aye.
Okay, the next item up was the food pantry relocation contract, but I think we're going to defer that for a month. So that takes us to EPS, and I think, Michelle, you're going to handle these issues?
Yes, these items relate to outdoor dining. We have 2 additional applications for outdoor dining and 1 approved restaurant asking permission to have an additional outdoor item. The first application relates to Starbucks. They will have the same dining area as in years past. It will be right across the street at the corner of Washington and Hinsdale. Starbucks will have 3 black metal tables, 3 black metal chairs, 2 black umbrellas with no signage. The photos are on page 9 of our packet, and they'll provide an example of what they submitted with what everything will look like. The area will be framed out with planters from the village. Our second application relates to Tony's Patisserie. Tony's Patisserie. Thank you, Laurel. Tony's will have 4 black tables, 8 chairs, 6 black rectangular planters, which will frame out the area. The tables will be in front of their storefront, and it will definitely leave room, enough room for us to walk by on the sidewalk. They will have nice woven wicker cafe chairs. We understand that these are not black, but they definitely will complement the theme of the store and will look nice in that area. Tony's will be responsible for the planting and the maintenance of the planters. With respect to the 2 additional applications, are there any questions? Third, we have Il Poggiolo. They were previously approved in May, and they're asking for 1 additional item to be in their outdoor dining area. The outdoor dining guidelines right now do not permit service stations or hostess stands, but they would like to have a self-enclosed service station in their outdoor dining area. An example of what they are looking at is on the very last page of the application, is a station with black wood, enclosed cabinets, and a stainless steel top. We are told that they will wheel it in at night. What we would do is we would ask that if dishes are placed on it, that they are bussed in a timely fashion. This will help to avoid birds and squirrels, visiting the area, and would also keep a good visual space for diners and folks walking by. And we would also ask that the service station be placed on the asphalt portion of the outdoor dining area, not the sidewalk. We would like to keep the sidewalks open as much as possible. Kathleen or Trevor, am I missing anything else?
No, that was very good.
Any questions?
And that busing station being on the pavement versus the sidewalk, that's consistent across the village, right?
This is the only one.
This is
the only way.
this is the only service station
Got it.
itself. It's a busy area. They have a lot of tables out there. If we can help them make service faster and just keep that area cleaner, it's a good idea.
Sure.
Okay, anybody here to talk on any of these? No? Okay.
All right, seeing none, I would move to approve outdoor dining permits in the village right-of-way until October 31st, 2022 for Starbucks and Tony's, and amend the issued Il Poggiolo permit, subject to final issuance by the Community Development Department and subject to any conditions to be set forth by the building commissioner and the fire department upon final inspection.
Second.
Roll call vote?
Trustee Postuma?
Aye.
Trustee Harlow?
Aye.
Trustee Stifler?
Aye.
Trustee Fisher?
Aye.
Trustee Banky?
Aye.
Okay, Michelle, you gonna do the,
10D also relates to outdoor dining. This is for Casa Margarita. The application here is a little different since there is a lease with the village, and then that lease is governed by the railway. So, with respect to outdoor dining, Casa Margarita needs to apply for a temporary use permit in order to have its outdoor dining area. For Casa Margarita, the setup will be the same as it's been since 2016. There will be 14 gray metal tables, 28 gray metal chairs, and then black umbrellas. There'll be string lights along the wooded fence area. They will have planters and plants. They will maintain and water those boxes. There were some current concerns about the wood fencing that surrounded that area. My understanding, per Rob McGinnis, those issues have been addressed.
meaning the fence is fixed.
Correct.
Yes.
Does anyone have any questions? I'll make a motion to approve a temporary use permit and related license and indemnification agreement for outdoor seating until October 31st, 2022 for Casa Margarita located at 25 East Hinsdale Avenue, subject to conditions to be set forth by the building commissioner.
Second.
Roll call vote?
Trustee Postuma?
Aye.
Trustee Harlow?
Aye.
Trustee Stifler?
Aye.
Trustee Fisher?
Aye.
Trustee Banky?
Aye.
Thanks for your hard work on this, Michelle. Luke?
Yeah, which moves us to agenda item 10E, and this is an ordinance. It's a second read designating the home at 121 South County Line Road, commonly known as the Bagley House, as a historic landmark. This home was built in 1894 and was designed by Frank Lloyd Wright, one of the most well-known architects for what is commonly referred to as the Prairie School architectural style. The home showcases Frank Lloyd Wright's style, including an octagonal library, open first floor, and a deep porch. The home recently sold, and the purchasers are requesting the local landmark designation. The owners have submitted detailed historic and architectural information on the house, and this matter was heard by the Historic Preservation Commission at a public hearing in April. The Historic Preservation Commission reviewed the criteria which is set forth in Section 14-13-1 of the Village Code and determined that the property met the criteria for landmark designation, which is detailed very well in the findings and facts of the recommendation. And I previously went through many of those, and the total of 15. I'm not going to go through those again as they are a second read here. I will say that at our board meeting last month, the applicant and also Gene Follett provided a presentation outlining the history of the home. The applicant stated that this will be the second Frank Lloyd Wright house that they have refurbished and preserved. And Ms. Follett stated that the applicant is looking to looking to take advantage of the tax freeze offered by the state of Illinois. So that's all I've had for prepared comments, but I know we have some people, residents from the community who'd like to speak on the matter. Yep. I think that's the Villages.
I set my book on it. Is that going to be okay?
Oh, yeah.
Okay. Hi. My name is... Got to fix these microphones, you know? I came in the room tonight and I looked back at my picture back there and I was stunned to notice that the picture actually looks older than I do right now. It's absolutely incredible, isn't it? So why on earth would Bob Lennox of 503 Chanticleer Lane be interested in a Frank Lloyd Wright house on County Line Road? Let me give you a little background if I could, just for a second. I appreciate that. First of all, like many of the people who live here in Hinsdale, I was born and raised in Oak Park. And in 1950, when I was very, very small, my parents purchased a house at 223 North Euclid in Oak Park, which is today known as the George Furbeck House, designed by Frank Lloyd Wright and built in 1897, so just a mere 3 years after the Bagley House. The Bagley House is not a Prairie-style house. I'm sorry to tell you that. My parents' house was a Frank Lloyd Wright Prairie-style house. If you want to look at a Prairie-style house, you might try looking at the Hurtley House on Forest Avenue in Oak Park, or the Roby House down by the University of Chicago. Those are true Prairie-style houses, in my opinion. I became involved, too, with the Frank Lloyd Wright Foundation and Trust in 2019, when the tour, I don't know if any of you have ever been on the tour, it's the only fundraiser the foundation has. The foundation is completely privately funded. It receives no help from the Village of Oak Park. I joined as a volunteer to basically help show the Edward Probst House, which was on tour. It was supposed to be in 2019. Does anybody remember what happened in 2019? We all became sick. So the tour really didn't take place until last September. Shortly after the tour, and I had a lot of fun on that assignment, there were 30 volunteers per house, by the way, on that tour. There was 10 houses. Many of them are Frank Lloyd Wright houses. If you haven't done these tours, I'd certainly suggest you think about it, although they're pretty expensive. So this year I was contacted and asked to be a research captain on one of the houses on this year's tour, and it just concluded last month in May. And I found out a lot about an 1888 house. That was the house I was assigned to, specifically the Kennedy House on Kenilworth Avenue in Oak Park. A beautiful structure, 5,900 square feet, built in 1888 for the Kennedy family, who moved out from Chicago. A lot of people were moving out from Chicago because the fire destroyed most of the city at that time. So they sought refuge in Oak Park, and a lot of money flowed into Oak Park. That money stopped coming into Oak Park after World War II, and the village kind of fell into disrepair. And when my parents bought the Furbeck House in 1950, it was in very bad shape. Frank Lloyd Wright was just another architect at that point, and these were old houses. It's 53 years old when parents bought it. Now this house and the Bagley House are approaching 130 years old. Anybody who wants to take on restoring a Frank Lloyd Wright house has my awe, okay? Because when my parents lived in that house, it was a never-ending project, one day to the next. So I'm asking that the village think carefully about conferring tax benefits, grants, or any other kind of financial support for any house here in Hinsdale, not only including the Bagley House, but any house. The houses in Oak Park are all privately taken care of. They're privately restored. They're privately taken care of, and they're privately lived in, too. When I called our village planner about the Bagley House and said, you know, what is the benefit to the owners of the Bagley House to seek this designation, a landmark designation? And I was told that they will freeze the assessed valuation, right? So that means when taxes go up for people like myself, their taxes are not going to go up. So the taxes that they pay, they're not paying, I should say, are going to have to be paid by the rest of us here in Hinsdale. And I think that's a question we ought to ask the Bagley people. They're getting a benefit, but what is the benefit to the village? You might say, well, we're going to have a Frank Lloyd Wright house. Well, we have a lot of nice houses here. We have Zook houses here. We have Talmadge and Watson houses here. We have a lot of nice houses in Hinsdale. But I really think that this is the only house that I know of which is asking for this kind of historic landmark preservation and therefore freezing their taxes. And, oh, well, by the way, I was glad to see they mowed the lawn today, too. As I drove by it, they mowed the lawn. It was great to see that. But I'm trying to figure out why exactly are we doing this for them? What caused us to basically freeze their taxes and have the rest of us pay for these taxes? And that, I think, is a question which I really haven't gotten an answer to. And I really would like to know what the benefit to the village is for this. Oak Park has many, many Frank Lloyd Wright houses, but Oak Park does not basically financially support any of these houses. We're going to be financially supporting the Bagley house. And I think it's something we ought to think about. Yeah.
When there's no village money going to the Bagley house, we see the owners are willing to put in millions of dollars into this home to refurbish it. And I don't agree.
I haven't seen any plans, Tom, at this point.
What's
So
that?
I'll take your word for it that they're going
Well,
to.
that's the case.
Yeah.
And I don't agree with the proposition that if they get a tax freeze, your taxes go up. I mean,
Yeah.
first of all, I don't know that it works that way. It's not as though that the state of Illinois wants a certain amount of taxes. If they don't get it from somebody, they move on to somebody else. I don't know this would actually affect your tax rates. But as I said, I mean, first of all, I think that anybody who's
Wait a minute,
really...
hold it. I'm a little confused here. You got me confused. If their taxes are not going up, somebody else's has to.
Why?
To offset that. Because your budget goes up every year.
No, it's not we don't set property taxes. We're non-home rule. We have no effect on property taxes. That's
Property
at the state
taxes go to
level.
support the village
Right,
and the
but-
school system
right,
here.
but we can't raise them. So to the extent that there's a tax rate to the Bagley house, that doesn't mean there's going to be more taxes to you because the village has no control over tax rates.
We can agree
Property
to
tax-
disagree on that.
No, we don't.
Yeah.
We can't raise tax rates. We're a non-home rule. So.
We can agree to
and also,
disagree on that.
As I pointed out before, I mean, I think that most people who are, Frank Lloyd Wright, people who like Frank Lloyd Wright homes, know that this is not a prairie-style house, but this is evidence of the evolution of a style, and I think it's relevant for that purpose. And as I said at the last board meeting, the day that this was put on the market to be torn down, I probably got 500 emails from all around the country, from as far away as Seattle to Florida to California, and they said, what can you do to save this house? Then we had somebody come and ask to save the house, and they're going to put money into it, and I think it's a good thing, and I don't see any reason why we shouldn't approve this.
I'm only bringing these points up because I didn't really feel that I got an answer to my question. If the Bagley house taxes are going to be frozen, what is that a benefit to the village? Why is that a benefit to the village? Because somebody else is going to have to pick up that slack, Tom.
Yeah.
And I'm sorry, that's the way it's going to be.
And
Okay.
we've had this conversation. I think we had 8 to 10 committee of the whole meetings on Article 14. And at least it's just my opinion, Bob, that, in general, I feel the majority of residents within the village appreciate and put some type of value, and we can debate on what that value is, to historic preservation. So the village, as the governing board here, wants to do what we can to incentivize historic preservation rather than having everything be a tear down. And, we're doing that with Article 14, just like we intend to approve the variance for the 350 square feet from the matter that was on here previously.
I'm not here to debate whether or not the Frank Lloyd Wright house is a good idea in Hinsdale. I'm not here to debate that.
No,
I love Frank Lloyd Wright houses as much as anybody.
No, but
what
you
I'm
would ask-
concerned about is the village granting special privileges to this house to the detriment of the rest of the village, and I think that that's going to be the case.
And as you said, we may disagree.
Not the
on-
detriment. That's too harsh a word.
Yeah, I don't agree with that at all. I mean, I think that's a false assumption. I don't think there's any detriment. We don't set property taxes.
Right.
So, I don't think there's any, you can't draw a line between a tax freeze on the Bagley house and property tax increase to any resident in the village. It's just, that's a false assumption.
Were there a lot of people lined up to buy this house when it went on the
No,
market? I
there
don't think
weren't.
so.
That's the
one
point.
person. Yeah,
Right.
An out-of-state person who is not going to live there.
So
I'm
not following
confused
your
about.
logic. not
I'm
following your
confused
logic.
about the use of the house too. After they quote
Well,
rehab it.
So you're moving on now from taxes to a
Well,
different topic.
I'm moving on to my second question, and
Okay.
that is, what is the benefit to the village?
Restoring a architecturally significant home that the village values.
The village values. Now,
And the residents of the village value.
I disagree with that, because I think the village has had a mixed bag in terms of historical preservation. And all I need to do is point to the Harold Zook house. In 2005, maybe a little before your time here, that house was unearthed and moved over to the Catherine Legge Park. You'll recall that perhaps, Tom?
I do.
It is now on public land. From time to time, from my little place in Chanticleer. I go across the way there and look at that house. It's still a see-through house, 25 or 20 years after it was moved. So the restoration of the Harold Zook house ain't happening. So I have a real problem when we get involved here in Hinsdale with historic preservation, because that's a matter of taste and likes. I mean, I like Frank Lloyd Wright houses. Nobody would have this book who doesn't like Frank Lloyd Wright houses. You have to be deeply ill with Frank Lloyd Wright houses to have this book. It's a great book. It lists all of the houses. Many of the houses that Wright built around this time are now gone.
But you'd also ask the question, this isn't an exclusive, benefit just to one. How many homes do we have that have been, preserved, that are on landmark status?
We have approximately 23 landmarked homes in the village.
Yeah. So this will increase it from 23 to 24. So I would say it's not a specific benefit just to one individual.
I wanted to come and voice my opinion about this. It's a wonderful thing about this village that we can come and do this. When I was a village trustee here, I sat with you guys and listened to a lot of people like myself, and it's a great thing. But I am concerned about the so-called Historic Preservation Commission that is taking over, and now I understand we're going to have Robbins Park, historic park now, laid out with 4 signs on each corner, which I'm sure will be extremely well-done signs. I don't know, is it Robbins Park a historic park? I don't know. But there we are. So we're getting a little caught up with this. But I very much appreciate your time tonight, okay?
Anybody else?
And I would hope that the village might hold up on any further landmark designations. Thank you.
Anybody else here on the Bagley House?
Comments from trustees, issues?
Well, by putting the designation on their house, they're also agreeing to some restrictions. They're not going to be
Right.
able to tear it down,
Not going
right?
to tear it down.
Yeah,
This is a way to preserve it.
Right,
Right.
they're,
Yeah. And
I was wondering, why don't we wait until the house is done before we do a landmark?
no, because they're going, the private individual is investing lots of money in the house. And we've agreed to assist them in the ways that we can. And this is one of the ways we can. So we're trying to encourage restoration of historic homes. And to the extent people want to designate them as historic homes and get a tax break, and as Matt points out, it precludes them from tearing down the house. I view that, and I think the majority of the village views that as a good thing.
I'm not suggesting it's not a good thing. I'm simply suggesting that the houses I'm familiar with in Oak Park did not achieve landmark designation, including the home studio, by the way, until they've been fully restored and the landmark that wasn't that. This house is far from fully restored. Although I'd like to see it on there.
Want to make a motion?
Yeah, I would. So, hearing everything, I am going to make a motion to approve an ordinance designating 121 South County Line Road as a historic landmark, commonly known as the Bagley House.
Second.
Roll call vote.
Trustee Postuma.
Aye.
Trustee Harlow.
Aye.
Trustee Stifler.
Aye.
Trustee Fisher.
Aye.
Trustee Banky.
Aye.
Which moves us on to agenda item 10F. Agenda item 10F is an ordinance for exterior appearance and site plan for changes to an existing one-story building at 222 East Ogden Avenue, which is located in the B3 General Business District, and the applicant is Normandy Builders, which is currently in the building on the southwest corner of County Line Road and Ogden Avenue. They're going to move their business down the street to the west. The use by Normandy as a showroom and an office is a permitted use and simply requires exterior appearance and site plan approval by this board. I would note that the site is approximately 1.35 acres and is a non-conforming with respect to certain bulk requirements such as parking lot setbacks, spaces, and spaces, but as a non-conforming property, it is within our code. The impervious surface area will be increased slightly, but is also still within our code. The properties surrounding it include a multi-tenant office building to the east, the Shell gas station to the west, the Gateway Shopping Center and a parking lot to the south, and then a multi-tenant office building across Ogden to the north. There are no residential properties that are contiguous to this application. I would note that in April, the Plan Commission did hold a public hearing on the matter, and there were several recommendations or discussions regarding this application, one concerning parking spaces, And it was noted that there would be no trucks or any type of overnight parking on the site. Also, there was not a lighting plan that was reviewed by Plan Commission, but a lighting plan was reviewed here at the last board meeting, and there are going to be no additional lights going up in the parking lot. I would note that at our board meeting last month, Dave Mitchell, who was a representative of Normandy Builders, outlined their plans for the property. The only item that was left open was the condition of the parking lot. I did go and review or inspect the parking lot, as did certain members of staff, and determined along with Normandy, rather than completely grinding the existing blacktop and resurfacing with new blacktop, that simply a patch and sealing would be sufficient for this property, and that's the only change that has been made to the ordinance since last month. So with that, I would open, is there anyone here in the audience to speak on this matter?
Okay.
Hearing none, trustees, issues, comments?
There's no landscaping issues with this like we've seen.
No, there were, that was discussed in depth at the Plan Commission. We touched briefly on it at the first, and
Right.
they're doing a,
Right, but there's no
doing
screening of residential.
No.
Okay.
No,
okay.
if you recall, they talked about the, I think there was an elevator in the back,
Right.
and there was gonna be screening on top of that, but it was not gonna be higher than the second floor.
Okay, right, I remember that.
Yep.
Okay.
And they have a landscaping plan.
Yeah,
Yeah.
they do.
Yeah.
Yep. So with that, I will make a motion to approve an ordinance approving exterior appearance and site plan for changes to an existing one-story building known as the Normandy Remodeling and located at 222 East Ogden Avenue.
Second.
Roll call vote?
Trustee Postuma?
Aye.
Trustee Harlow?
Aye.
Trustee Stifler?
Aye.
Trustee Fisher?
Aye.
Trustee Banky?
Aye.
Thank you. Which moves us on to agenda item 10G. And this is an ordinance for a special use permit for an automotive repair shop in the B1 Community Business Zoning District at 5837 South Madison Street. The property is approximately 2,927 square feet. It's at the northeast corner of Madison and 59th. The building was formerly occupied by an automotive repair facility and has been vacant since 2019. It has also previously been used as a gas station, but the underground storage tanks were removed in 2016. Special use permits expire 6 months after the use or the property is terminated. And since the previous business ceased in 2019, a new special use permit is required, even though it would be the same use as the business that vacated in 2019. It should also be noted that staff could not find a previous special use permit for the automotive repair facility at this location. It is believed that the use went back to as far as 1989. The auto repair facility building is part of a larger 1.24 acre zoning lot that includes a 9,200 square foot multi-tenant shopping center. The multi-tenant building is currently occupied by a convenience store, a beauty salon, and several vacant tenant spaces. The property is surrounded by townhomes in the R5 district to the north and to the south, and apartment buildings are located to the east in the R6 district, and to the west across on Madison Street are single-family detached homes, which are in unincorporated Dupage County. It is proposed that the new business for this special use permit will have 5 vehicle repair bays. It will operate from 9 a.m. to 6 p.m. Monday through Friday and 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. on Saturdays, closed on Sundays. For the use of the property, 52 spaces to 58 spaces are required, or we would have approximately 2 deficient by 4 spaces, depending if the vacant properties are used. But since those properties are vacant right now, this use will comply with our code. I would note that there was a public hearing held by the Plan Commission in February. The applicant and the members from a single-family HOA across the street in unincorporated Dupage were at the meeting. There were members of the HOA who opposed the application, and there was also a member from the president of the HOA Association was at our first board meeting last month. They basically questioned if this type of business is still appropriate given the location of the residential areas. There were concerns over the condition of the existing property, and there was also a request that all of the parking or vehicles be limited to parcel 1 rather than spread throughout the entire shopping center. Plan commissioners did echo most of the concerns that the HOA did voice. And after discussions, the Plan Commission did recommend by a vote of 6-0 approval of the special use permit with the following conditions. One, that the dumpsters be stored in the rear in a fenced-in enclosure, that all operations and parking shall be limited to parcel 1 only, that they need to paint the existing trim of the building, enhance the landscaping of the property with potted plants, no outside vehicle storage to be allowed on the property, and investigate replacing the fence. I would note then that at our meeting, there was a fair amount of discussion with regards to the property, storage, and President Cawley brought up the previous gas canopy to see whether or not that should be removed. They did receive several. I know that the owner received a quote that was approximately $14,000. Staff went out and received quotes, I believe, that were approximately $8,000 and $10,000, Rob?
On average, it was 11.
Average was 11,000, and it was from two different.
Correct.
We took some consideration. There were a number of questions that trustees had. As such, staff did a fair amount of work, I believe, talked with the applicants and also with me, and we've amended the ordinance to include from the last time the following conditions for a special use permit. And I'm going to be specific on these and read them directly from the
Are
packet.
these in addition to or?
Correct.
Okay, in addition to what you just read?
In addition to what the Plan Commission had recommended, and in addition to what was presented at the first board meeting.
Okay.
They're going to be specifically that overnight vehicle parking shall be prohibited on the property other than in the 10 exterior parking spaces located behind the building and the fence, and in the 5 spaces in the interior bays of the building. All is depicted, and which is depicted in Exhibit D here. So there'll be allowed to be 15 cars parked at the property overnight, which would be 5 in the bays and then 10 behind the property, which the residential, single-family residential homes across the street would not be able to see.
Is it behind or to the south?
Behind. It looks like it's part of the apartment building, but it's not.
Okay, I see. It's behind the fence where the dumpster is?
Correct.
Okay.
Parking spaces on the property shall not be leased or rented to any third parties. Parking spaces on the property shall not be used for any type of commercial or passenger vehicle storage or parking other than for vehicles awaiting repairs. And if you recall, I think that the operator of the property there says that he actually charges people on a per night basis if they don't pick it up, so it discourages cars from being there on a long-term basis. Also, that all automotive repair work, servicing or associated activities shall be performed within the interior of the building. There would be no exterior work permitted, which should cut down on any noise with the neighbors. Also, the applicant shall remove the existing gas station canopy to grade. I believe, and I know I've had conversations with President Cawley, this is a maintenance matter. As the property is improved, those things should be, those should be removed so that it doesn't look like a gas station any longer. Also, the applicant shall seal and coat and restripe the parking lot. And lastly, I did go over and inspect the fence. I did not think it was in that bad of condition. There were no pieces of wood that were missing, and I think seriously, if they power wash it and seal it, that will be in decent shape. So those are the additional conditions that are improved in this ordinance, and I would open it up to anyone from the audience and also trustees for comments.
My name is Wade Joyner. I represent the applicant. As far as the conditions regarding the operation of the business, those are fine. We just would like to get it approved tonight. I'm not sure the canopy removal is feasible, but Mr. Ehrlich will talk about that.
Everything's feasible.
I understand the need. We're the tenant. We feel like we're between a rock and a hard place. The place was broken into last month. That's what happens to vacant buildings. And my clients are starting to feel like that Hinsdale doesn't want them here. And,
Well,
That's not true at all.
I know, I'm just telling you
See-
that's
see,
their,
the use here is a special use, right? And the use that would be permitted in there is a different kind of use. And so if we were going to allow this kind of special use, we want to make sure that it fits in with the residential neighborhood around.
Yeah.
So, I think we're certainly not trying to discourage your client from coming, but I think we have certain conditions that we think are important for the residents around the area.
with respect, Mr. Chairman, this is not a different kind of use. This is a use that's been in existence
Right,
till
but it's still,
2019.
but under our code, it's not a permitted use. You have to come back to the
Correct.
board for that. And so part of when you come back to the board is we can put conditions on it.
And what part of the use restrictions do you have a problem with?
I'll let the landlord speak. My understanding is he doesn't believe the canopy to be feasible.
That has nothing to do with the use, that's the condition of the property.
Well,
And
yes.
that's the upkeep of the
Yes,
condition
but
of
it's
the
not
property.
going to, we can't get in there unless there's this condition is taken care of. So we're just sort of
Right.
pinched in between. Somebody broke in. I mean, nothing bad happened, but
Right.
who knows next time? And like I said, it's been going on for a long time. And
But the things that relate to your client's operations, you don't have any problem with that.
no, that's all good.
Yeah.
We just want to get in there. We want to
Yep.
start
Okay,
being a business.
okay,
Thank you.
thanks.
Hi, I'm Jim Rowlett, the property manager. I don't know if it's been relayed, but ownership for the last 2.5 years have been paying the mortgage out of their pocket, as the center and the vacant auto repair haven't been able to generate enough income to pay the mortgage. There is no money. The canopy, one of our ideas, keep it somewhere in the future, use as an EV charging station when it becomes more economically feasible to use it that way. We have filled all the stores in the shopping center except for one. So we will start generating income. We will improve the property. We would like to improve the property. There's just no money at the present time to do anything. Thank you.
From my perspective, the canopy's a non-starter.
It's for me.
It's got to come
It's
down.
not a gas station anymore, so
No,
there's
it's not a
need
gas
for it.
station, and I
Yeah.
really do think, we're trying to make this part of town, particularly this area, look better. And in my view, the canopy should come down, and it's not an issue of, it's just the building is designed for a garage or repair station. I think any tenant you're going to get there is going to want to have that use. It's not going to be a gas station. So I think that it's not as though you can go out and find a different tenant, a different kind of tenant. So it seems to me that this is something that we're going to insist on no matter when you come back, so you might as well do it now.
Can we do it on a delayed basis so they can get in, start paying us rent?
Well, I don't have a
And
problem. I
then
don't know if
we
you guys have a
can,
problem. If it comes down, I just
and
want
then we
it to
can
come-
take
I just
it
want it
down.
to come down. And maybe you escrow a couple months' rent.
Reasonable time.
But, I mean, the issue is having it come down. If it's a cash flow problem, we can work with you.
6 months enough?
I think we give them 6 months free rent, so we won't generate income.
Part of
If we made it a
part of the
year,
problem here, sir, is we are not, our mandate as village government is to not make this a financially successful business for you. We can't supplement you and help you. We understand everything that's there, but if you can't maintain, we're interested in maintaining the property and make sure that it's representative of the village and not a nuisance to the surrounding properties.
we would like to improve it. If you gave us a year, that would get us the cash flow to take it down. I'll talk to the village to get whoever was the lowest bidder and get them on board. We will sign it, we'll let you know.
I don't have a problem with that. I want this, I want somebody to get in there, but I also want it to look good. And if we can get somebody in there and get it to look good too, then everybody wins. So, and if you don't have the cash now, I don't know if the other trustees, we give them a year and you take it down within a year, that's fine. It's been vacant for what?
If he doesn't do
For a
that,
year,
it's gonna
he
be-
went bankrupt right at the
Yeah, so,
onset of
so what's
COVID.
what's our hook if it's
Right.
not done? What do we,
You could revoke the special use permit.
is
That's not an
is
incentive
that,
for you.
is that
Business isn't-
proper? Can we do that?
Yes.
So if everybody's agreeable to that, I mean, I just don't want to have you come back in a year and say,
No.
I can't do it. And I'm not saying you, I'm just, I do this as a matter of process. It's not anything relating to you, but is that acceptable well, now, the tenant, you're not gonna have to invest any capital in this, are you?
No, not for the canopy.
No, but if we revoked the occupancy permit because you didn't take down the canopy, you would be the one that would be affected by that.
But we'll build into our lease that if we don't do it, they can withhold rent and do it themselves.
Okay, I mean,
And
maybe we can work out something.
And we'll do the landscaping.
Yeah.
Once you grant the permit, we'll get going on that, and the fencing, we'll get that all done.
If not, the canopy could be there in 2 years.
Yeah.
If we don't do anything.
Yeah, so I don't have a problem with this. Do you?
One of us will get it
No,
done.
so that, if you could, Rob, work it out so that it should be that it's 1 year, we can revoke the occupancy permit, and then they can work out between themselves. The tenant can withhold 1 month's rent for purposes of taking down the canopy within a year from now. And, I'd rather not the village be involved in this, but I'd like to get this done.
I can't believe I'm making a recommendation to a lawyer,
Right.
but
I'm a litigator, I'm not a transactional.
That's true. My concern is, and I've seen this, I would like to potentially see, we get a year down the road, the gentleman has a very successful business, it's good for the village, and the landowner just says, I'm not gonna do this, you can leave, I've got somebody else
Right,
and I can raise the rent on them.
That's an issue between them.
But it gives him a foot that we're giving him that leverage, and I don't want to give that leverage away.
No, how long's your lease gonna be for?
I think it's 5 years.
I think it's a 5-year.
We'll put in a clause that if we don't do it, they can do it and withhold
Yeah, but they've got a
rent. So
5-year
that
lease, so
will,
he's not gonna be able to kick them out.
so one of us will get it done.
I think this will work. I think this is a productive conversation.
Okay, thank you very much.
12 months?
12 months, right.
Any other comments from residents? Trustees, President Colley?
So should we vote on it tonight?
Yes.
Yeah, okay, and then we will look at the agreement, maybe bring back an amendment to this so that they can get in and we can finalize this? Okay.
So I'm going to make a motion to approve an ordinance approving a special use permit to operate an automotive repair shop in the B1 Community Business Zoning District at 5837 South Madison Street, doing business as Hinsdale Discount Tire and Automotive, Inc., with the additional condition that the canopy comes down 12 months from when within 12 months of the special use permit being issued.
Perfect.
Anybody here to talk about this? No, okay.
Second.
Roll call vote.
Trustee Postuma?
Aye.
Trustee Harlow?
Aye.
Trustee Stifler?
Aye.
Trustee Fisher?
Aye.
Trustee Benke?
Aye. Okay, that takes us to, where are we at now?
Discussion items.
Discussion items. What, are you people here for something specific that we haven't got to? What is it? Oh, okay. You could have spoken at first.
Well, let me notice that was pertaining to any issue.
No, well, okay, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to make you sit here. Do you want to talk now?
Sure.
Sure, we'll get to I didn't mean to keep you, I thought there was an agenda item you're here for.
Good evening, my name is Jared Staver. I'm here tonight with my wife Kelly Staver. We've resided since 2008 at 115 Fuller Road in Hinsdale with our 2 boys. I'm speaking here tonight regarding 110 East Ogden, owned by Kara Van Warmer Hartman, operating as Therapeutic Health Associates. This is a commercial property under construction that is directly adjacent to our residential property. Several failures to act in conformance with our village code by village staff and legal counsel have brought myself and my neighbors here tonight. On August 16th, 2021, almost a year ago, several landmark trees on our property were wrongfully removed by agents of 110 East Ogden. Our village code defines a landmark tree as any tree that is 8 inches in diameter or more and measured 4.5 feet from the ground. The code requires 14 days notice by any person who proposes to remove a landmark tree. There's no evidence in the record that this was done by the property owner prior to the removal of our trees. This has left us with 0 screening from the commercial property. Prior to the wrongful removal of these landmark trees, we could not see 110 East Ogden from our residential property. My wife and I immediately notified the village after our trees were removed. Lourdes Garcia, also known as Lourdes Back, a village enforcement officer and code inspector, came to our property and met with my wife, Kelly. Lourdes observed where the property line was, and she stated she would immediately initiate an investigation and contact the general contractor of 110 East Ogden. However, the next day, Lourdes called my wife, Kelly, and informed Kelly that her boss, Mr. Robert McGinnis, told her not to do anything, that this was simply a civil matter. Mr. McGinnis elected not to act despite the fact the village had issued a permit or an ordinance to only do work within the bounds of 110 East Ogden property, and despite clear and overwhelming evidence that the trees that were removed were within the definition of landmark trees and protected by the village code, which prescribes a $500 fine for violating said code. My wife and I then immediately brought this to the village manager's attention. Both the village manager, Kathleen Gargano, and the assistant village manager, Bradley Bloom, also came to our property and inspected the damage that had been done. They saw the property stakes and confirmed numerous trees were removed within our property line. They witnessed the stumps that had been cut down within our property. We also showed them photographs of the trees in our backyard prior to them being wrongfully removed. The photographs we provided them demonstrated the vast amount of screening between our residential property and the commercial property prior to our trees being removed. Kathleen Gargano and Bradley Bloom assured my wife and I they would address this. However, as opposed to issuing a stop work order or citing the 110 East Ogden owner with violating the village code for removing landmark trees without proper notice or approval, the village manager ultimately did not act according to her prescribed duties under the code. Section 11701 of our village code states, quote, upon finding the existence of any violation of this code, the village manager shall have the authority and duty to take or direct all actions necessary or appropriate to abate and redress such violation, end quote. Instead of taking action to provide us with redress, on November 5th, 2021, Ms. Gargano sent us a letter, which according to her was at the insistence of the village lawyer, Michael Mars, that the village would not be taking any action. Both Kathleen Gargano and Bradley Bloom made it clear to us that the village lawyer, Michael Mars, insisted that the village not get involved and told us to go file a civil action. Again, despite this being a matter in which the village issued an ordinance and allowed violations of that ordinance to occur after we pointed out the violations. In effect, if the village manager's assertions are true, that the village attorney advised the village manager not to take any action, he was in essence instructing our village manager not to follow the very code or law that this board has approved and is governed by. Regardless of whether the village manager was told not to enforce the code by Michael Mars, that is ultimately what happened. This is not what the residents of Hinsdale expect out of our tax dollars, which pays the salaries of the village staff and attorney's fees. We're not in LA, we're not in Portland, we're not in San Francisco, where officials simply elect not to follow the law. If our village staff and council refuse to enforce the village code, then our code is absolutely meaningless. After exhausting all of our efforts with the village, we were compelled to file an appeal with the Zoning Board of Appeals, also known as the ZBA, in January of this year. Michael Mars, the village lawyer, filed a 20-plus page brief in opposition to our appeal, residents of Hinsdale, attempting to have it dismissed before the Board of Appeals. He did this despite overwhelming evidence our appeal presented regarding the errors in the ordinance that was issued to the owner of 110 East Ogden and the clear violations that occurred. Fortunately, our appeal was not dismissed. Our appeal is currently pending before the ZBA. The ZBA has stayed our appeal because as a result of our appeal, Mr. McGinnis and Mr. Mars admitted they finally reviewed the whole record and discovered the ordinance as issued by this board to 110 East Ogden contains numerous errors and discrepancies, which we informed the village staff of in August of 2021. Further, the ZBA recommended that due to the complete lack of any screening that now exists between our property and the commercial property, and the representations made by the 110 East Ogden property owner during this original approval phase, that the village should not issue a certificate of occupancy until that owner seeks a major site adjustment. On March 30th, Mr. McGinnis issued a letter to the property owner, which he just recently shared with us, basically informing them that they needed to do a major site adjustment of their landscape plan and that they would not be allowed to obtain an occupancy permit until they completed a major site adjustment to the ordinance that was issued to them. Despite that letter being issued in March, and the ZBA also staying our appeal until a major site adjustment has been done, it's our understanding that absolutely no action has been taken to date by the owner of 110 East Ogden. We're here this evening to bring this to this board's attention for these serious failures to act. Had this village staff and their council done their job and enforced the codes, rules, and regulations, we would not be here, nor would my wife and I incur an $1,100 appeal. Ultimately, it's this elected board's duty to oversee the village staff and ensure they're doing their jobs and enforcing this village code that we live by. Construction work continues daily at 110 East Ogden, with absolutely no movement to our knowledge in remedying the mistakes in the ordinance or the wrongful removal of our landmark trees. We're left with zero screening, none, and an eyesore of a commercial construction project since August of last year. That's all we see out our backyard. We believe it's incumbent upon you, this board, to address this matter with the village staff and to see that enforcement of the rules and the code are strictly adhered to. Furthermore, we are requesting that the board oversee that adequate screening is mandated and a major site adjustment is immediately ordered until any further work proceeds at 110 East Ogden. And we want you to ensure that all errors in the original ordinance are remedied. Thank you.
So I appreciate your problem. I mean, as I said to your wife last time, when I drive down Ogden, I could see your house from through there.
And you never used to be able to.
Never used to be able to. And so, you know, I did talk to the chair of the ZBA about this, and we talked about what the proper approach would be. And going back, well, let me first talk about what I think the proper approach would be. I mean, the idea of having them stop work is something I haven't heard of. I thought they were pretty close to being done.
I brought that up immediately in August of last year.
The one tool that this board has is the right to give an occupancy permit, right? And so what I told your wife, and this is, I think, was communicated to the developer, we will not issue an occupancy permit until there's satisfactory screening there. So they can't move in the building. That's a pretty big stick. They can't move in the building and use it until they satisfy that. So I don't know. I thought that was something that was imminent. If there's going to be a year of construction, maybe we try to move that up.
Maybe you should ask Mr. McGinnis. To our knowledge, they've done nothing to act on the major site adjustment.
Well, they can't move in. I mean,
I know, but
yeah.
Here they're going to come when the project's done, and they're going to say, "Hey, we need to get in," and they're not going to cry foul. Well, I hope you're right. I hope we get.
I am right. It's not. It's well.
After what we've been through.
I appreciate that, but they will not get an occupancy permit until there's screening. We made that clear. We would just not issue one. They cannot get in the building until there's screening.
I believe that's incumbent upon you to issue a stop work order. I asked the village managers, both of them.
I don't know whether we can do that.
You can do that. Yeah. The village lawyer said you should. We don't want to get involved because it's just a civil matter. Go away. Right. He has an incentive to obviously file a civil matter because then the village will get involved and he can bill extra hours for that. So, the point being, the stop work order is the major tool that the village has to say no more work. Enough's enough. Right. You were told in March to do this. You knew you did what you did. Enough. Right. You're not doing one doggone more thing until you make it right.
I hear what you're saying. We will look at that, but we will not issue an occupancy permit until they have screening. And what I suggested that they do and that you do is you get together and figure out what the screening will be.
With all due respect, Mr. President, we've tried that through the ZBA, and they literally will not talk to us.
Well, then they won't move in.
You're right.
They won't move in.
But are we going to be involved with this process when they come back with this major site adjustment?
You are. We aren't. You are, we aren't. I mean, the only way that we would be involved is if there's some, something that's unreasonable. But what we had this issue with Land Rover, and I'd rather not get involved with, where one tree goes and whether it should be a juniper or a
That's
Jerusalem
not our
cherry.
understanding. Ms. Gargano has actually communicated with my neighbor Greg Peters and said they have to actually come back to this board.
They do, but I
Okay.
want them to come back with something where, and we did this just with the church the other week, where we said to the residents, "Are you happy with this landscaping?" And the first time she said no. They came back and we said to her, "Are you happy with the landscape?" She said yes, and then we let the church do an amendment. We're going to do the same thing with you. I just don't want to be involved in like picking trees and stuff. But this is the promise I'm making to you. They will not move in there unless there is screening you are happy with. Okay? And that's between you and them. And the only way we'll step in if somebody's being unreasonable and you want something to cost, it's a $100,000 screening. But if it's anything in the realm of reason, we will default to the residents because we realize, I understand your passion on this. I would be pretty ticked off if somebody cut down the trees and I could see Ogden Avenue. I would be pretty ticked off too. I appreciate it. I will look into the stop work order, but I've already said we won't issue a zone occupancy permit. They can't move in there. And that's a pretty big stick as far as I'm concerned. They cannot move in there until they come and talk to you and you are satisfied. And we won't even listen to them here about giving them a major adjustment in occupancy permits until they talk to you and the other residents and are happy. That's the way we're going to handle it. If you want me to try to stop them sooner than that, I will look into it. But they will not move in there, and we've made that clear.
I'm not the only one that wants to speak on this issue tonight,
Sure.
so I'll bow. Thank you.
Yeah.
I know my husband just spoke. I will try not to be too repetitive, but I did want to. My name is Kelly Staver, by the way. I'm also the owner of 115 Fuller Road, and I just wanted to provide the board with more information from my experience. After my comments at the BOT meeting, I was informed that a letter was sent to the owner at 110 East Ogden and that a certificate of occupancy would not be issued until a major site adjustment was requested. I did want to point out that the letter was issued on March 30th. The Stavers nor the Kuhns were made aware, we were not made aware of this action or this letter until I made the comments to this board meeting more than a month later. Nobody from the village bothered to contact us despite the fact that we have been urging the village to take action since last August and despite the fact that we filed a zoning appeal regarding this same matter. And during the urging that we have been doing to the village since last August, we were told several times that the village has spent way too much time on this matter. Our zoning appeal is still pending, but we did not file the appeal until after we sent it to the village with a letter on January 6th requesting them, please review the appeal, and we were urging the village to help us get this resolved without further administrative action. Otherwise, the appeal would be filed within a week. We heard nothing back from the village again, so the appeal was filed. The village attorney then took the time to prepare and write a brief and presented it to the zoning board at our pre-hearing meeting to try to have our appeal dismissed without, admittedly, from the village itself, reviewing our entire case file. So he didn't have time to review the file, but he had time to write the brief. The letter sent to the owner on 110 East Ogden on March 30th states in part that in preparing for the zoning appeal, the village staff and the village attorney had the opportunity to re-examine the case file in its entirety, and then stated the discrepancies that are requiring the major site adjustment, using some of the exact comments and discrepancies we have been providing all along and have been pointing to the village since last August. The village staff told us there was nothing more they could do, which was obviously not the case. And the village attorney again took time to prepare the brief to get our appeal dismissed. All of this happened before the case files had been reviewed in their entirety by the village staff or the attorney, as stated in the letter that was wrote and sent on March 30th. And the proof of that is also, as they say, in the pudding, because they use some of the same statements and promises that we have been urging the village to investigate all along. And we find that to be unacceptable. The case files should have been reviewed in their entirety last August when we brought this up, or any time during the period prior to preparing for the zoning board hearing, to avoid all of this. Another issue is the lack of communication regarding the fact that now a site adjustment is required. We heard nothing, but I will tell you, when I did hear from the village, I received 2 separate personal phone calls from village employees after I sent the village clerk an email asking when the next BOT meeting was, because myself and some of the neighbors would like to attend. During those communications, I was told there would be no value in attending the meeting and was strongly and repeatedly encouraged not to attend, and also encouraged several times to write a letter and have my neighbors sign it in place of attending in person. I was also told the village would be in communication with me every step of the way, so there was no need to attend this meeting. So I'm here because, unfortunately, the village has failed us thus far, and we don't trust the process, and we want to ensure that full screenage will be mandated by the village. The trees that are there don't even hit our fence line, and they're not going to be adequate. And we already stated before, you could not see Ogden or the property before the screenage was removed, and now you can. So this does not just affect the Stavers and the Kuhns, despite the statements the owner of 110 East Ogden made, stating that it doesn't affect any of the neighbors that are not adjacent to the property, and we disagree. It most certainly does. It affects all of our neighbors on Fuller Road and all of our property values. It affects the neighbors on Franklin Street that just went through this with Land Rover. It affects all Hinsdale residents that border commercial properties or live on streets that do, and all residents of Hinsdale that moved here like us, in part because of the mature trees and the beauty of our village. When mature trees from the village are taken down, they must be replaced by mature trees. When a commercial property is being developed along a residential property in Hinsdale, egress must not be allowed and proper screenage must be mandated. Was a plan put in place after the Land Rover dispute to require proper screening so this would not happen again? Will a sound barrier and a wall such as the one added on Franklin Street be required? Will mature trees be required? It's essential that the village demands these protections to residential properties be put in place and enforced. Why do residents have to fight when a new commercial property comes in or is remodeled to protect our residential properties and home values? Why did we have to file a zoning appeal? Although the site adjustment is required, I feel like all we can do as neighbors is attend the meeting when the landscaping plan is submitted and comment on it, and we will have no idea what the village will require. President Colley, you stated that the BOT, at the last BOT meeting, after my comments, that you would make sure that the village takes care of it, and we are counting on that to be the case. We are counting on this board to take care of it. It does affect all of our neighbors, and we will be present and vocal until it's done. So please mandate adequate sound and aggression barriers and mature landscaping be put in place now for all residents of Fuller Road and for all Hinsdale residents in the future. Right. Thank you for your time.
Right. So the issue of sound barriers never came up. We're talking about landscape. And
well, now we can hear traffic that we could never hear before.
Well, right, but that's traffic from Ogden Avenue.
Right. Sound barriers meaning full screenage, meaning we also said some of our neighbors requested a fence because we didn't want people from Ogden to be able to. Was
there a fence there before?
We have a fence there. There was not a fence there before, but the building's been vacant. So it's not like people are parking in that parking lot and are able to access our properties. Right. So that was requested, and the owner stated that there'll be enough landscaping provided that you will not be able to address.
I appreciate the problem.
That's one of the issues with the ordinance as issued. The ordinance as it is issued right now requires a fence or a wall.
Okay,
but that owner has stated many, many times on the record to the ZBA that they are not building a fence.
Right.
That's why they've now said, oh, yeah, you're right, it is in the ordinance, you need to do a major site adjustment. But now, looking at this, with what they've done, we want a wall, we want a fence, we want just
Okay,
like what
so-
Land
so-
Rover has.
Right, well, right.
That's the ordinance
Whatever
that
the-
you guys
right.
rubber stamp.
Right,
You
because
guys put it
whatever
out
the
there.
ordinance, of course, the reason why, this is still before the ZBA, it's not before us yet, okay?
But
I'm-
we're bringing it before.
Right, right. I
Because of the
understand that. What
failures
is-
that exist.
Right, but what I'm telling you is that whatever, if the ordinance, whatever the ordinance requires, we will enforce, right, as written. And what I'm telling you is that when you talked about a landscape plan, you'll have to come here and object. That's not what I envision. What I envision is that the developer is going to come here with a landscape plan that you approve, because that's the only way we're going to allow it. okay?
They've been,
Yeah,
they've
but
been
this is what I'm
urged
telling
to-
you the way it's
okay.
going to work.
Okay.
And this is the way it's going to work.
Okay.
They will come here, and the first question I'll ask them when they show us a landscape plan, has you shown it to the residents? If they say no, I say, go away. If they come and say it's a landscape plan, have you shown it to the residents, and they say yes, they don't agree with it, I'll say, go away. It'll only be a landscape plan that you agree with, assuming that it's consistent with the ordinance and you're not being unreasonable. When there's an agreement, then we'll vote on it. That's the way it's going to work.
Consistent with the order, I mean, consistent with what? What ordinance?
I don't have, it's not on the agenda. I didn't read the ordinance before coming tonight. If there's an ordinance that I was talking about screening.
Well, we're saying that-
If there's a requirement in the ordinance for a fence, then they will be required to build a
Right,
fence.
but everything has changed since they removed all the screening, which
No,
they
but
were
the
not.
ordinance is in writing, right? The ordinance is in writing. You're talking about the state of the property now. I'm talking about the ordinance. They have an ordinance for developing the property. So to the extent that the ordinance does not talk about screening, we are going to require screening, right? And so if the ordinance says there has to be a fence, we will require a fence. But I'll say it one more time, that when they come here, my first question is, if they talk to you and are you in agreement with it? If it's not, then we won't approve it. And the stick I have is they can't move in until the board approves an occupancy permit. So they have to come and talk to you at some point, or they will never move in.
Okay, thank you.
Anyone else?
My name's Michael, and I live next door to the Starvers. I watched the video of the ZBA meeting, and I was a little concerned with what Mr. McGinnis said at the end of the meeting, which was ZBA is not going to handle this, that it's up to you. And if you can come to an understanding on what the owner of the property is going to do, and he basically said, if this is acceptable to this board, then it's going to move forward and we don't have a choice. So I would encourage all of you to watch that meeting and watch what Mr. McGinnis said.
Right, and I didn't follow the ZBA process. I'm not quite sure what the issue is before then, but I did get a call from the ZBA chair that says, how should we handle this? And I told him, I think this is an issue for the board. And I told him that the way we were going to handle it is through the occupancy permit process. And I told him that we were going to make sure that the developer and the residents agree on a landscape before we sign a zoning permit. I've done this before.
Right.
So we will not issue, they will not move in until you are happy.
Well,
As long as you're being reasonable.
And
As
I
long as
think,
you're being reasonable.
when we saw the building being, changed, we were all in favor of it. There's only 9 houses on our block, and 50% of them are rentals. So we all know each other pretty well.
Right.
What's concerning to me is that we also attended the Land Rover meetings. And at one point during one of the Land Rover meetings was, we should put something together that if there's a commercial property abut to a residential property, that there should be some form of wall, fence, something.
See, we've already had meetings to approve this, so we're past that, right?
But what I'm getting at is, I encourage this board to look at that. You did that with the gas station over on Madison Street.
Right.
You took the residents that are even village residents.
Right.
And listened to their concern. I would encourage all of you to look out for the rest of the residents
Right.
that abut up the commercial
Right.
property on Ogden Avenue.
Right, and what I am
Because
encouraging
it's going to happen again.
Right, what I'm encouraging the residents to do is, the developer will contact you because he's not going to get an occupancy permit until he does.
Well,
So then you talk to him and try to reach some kind of accommodation. And then, and only when you do, will we give an occupancy permit.
Can I hold you to that?
Yeah, I mean, that's.
Pam? I'm going to hold Pam to that.
That's the way we do it,
Because honestly, that's all we're asking.
yeah.
That's all we're asking. When, if somebody does something wrong to my property or something, you make it right and I'm good. This owner did not want to make anything right.
Yeah.
They didn't even call
No.
Julie when they cut the trees down.
No.
I mean, there's
understand.
telephone
And
lines.
and
I mean,
completely sympathize with you, but what I don't want to do is getting in a situation, which we did get in with Land Rover, which was a complete, absolute nightmare.
and I agree.
Is where we're
I agree.
picking out trees to.
we don't want to do
Right.
that.
So-
What we want is what's right for us
Right.
and what's right for them.
Right. But
We
I-
all have to live with each other.
Yeah, I
But
stand-
right now, we're here asking all of you for help.
Yeah.
Because they're not even talking to us
Well,
anymore.
as I said, they will have to. They will have to, or they'll never move in.
Okay, I appreciate that. Thank you.
From the resident standpoint, I see it as when the applicant, the business owner comes for a major adjustment, there's going to have to be screening that goes up with trees. It's going to be how many trees, what species, and how tall. What else am I right in that?
I would say that if code says that there should be a fence or a wall,
Right. Whatever it'd be screening plus what the ordinance requires, plus what the code requires. We're not
Okay.
asking for anything more.
if this doesn't happen, will you push it back to the ZBA to handle
No,
it?
it's going to be
It stays
handled
here.
here. It's
Okay.
gonna be handled here.
So
And
we'll never go
and
back to the
The
ZBA.
process is going to be.
And the reason why I'm asking that is, we all have lives, you have lives.
no, there's not gonna be any more-
But we don't want to keep coming to your meeting
Right.
and standing
You
out
don't
here
have
and
to. You
want to
don't
know if
have
we
to.
should go to the ZBA
Right.
meeting or the board
No,
meeting and.
this is handled at the board now, and the issue will be, the developer will meet with you, and he will talk about his plan, and he will not get an occupancy permit until you're happy with the plan, as long as you're reasonable.
Okay,
That's the process.
okay. Thank
No more
you.
complicated than that.
Thank you.
Yeah, am I correct in that? Three things: height, how many, and what species?
Absolutely.
Okay, I would encourage you, and you know the developer, email them and say, this is what I know they're not communicating with you, and I know
Right.
you're a proactive gentleman.
And I feel bad, I mean, they're not even here though to
I know, yeah.
participate.
Right,
so
but that's
we're
why-
trying to
The
give
ball
you
is
guys-
This is a
completely in
discussion
their
event.
court. I mean, they're the ones that cut down
know.
our trees, and they
that's-
haven't even had the decency to apologize,
I-
let alone even correspond
I'm
with.
sympathetic to the position that
Mr. McGinnis.
you're not getting anything remedied quickly.
Yeah.
I'm very sympathetic to that. But just to simplify things, I'm looking at it with those three things: height, species, and how many. Let's get that solved and get the parties in agreement. And then,
Just so everyone's aware that us, they cut down the trees, it's gonna be very tall, mature trees, and a lot of them that provides.
We understand. I got it.
automatic
I understand.
We're not gonna wait 20 years like what they have to, not what they have planted now, that don't even go over our fence.
We understand.
Again,
We understand.
you're talking about a stick. The real stick you can use here is a stop work order.
You said that. How much work do they have to do before they're ready to move in?
Quite a bit yet. They haven't had
Okay,
the
then
rough
why can't we issue a
inspections yet.
stop work order?
You absolutely have the authority to do so.
Do they have a land?
They've got
use
vested
plan?
rights under their permit.
This is something that we discussed with the village attorney. I don't have his opinion, but we did issue a stop work order to the screening area that's in
Which is the
dispute,
exact
which
opposite
is
of what
at-
we wanted.
let her finish, please.
which is at the ZBA. We did work with
Okay.
the
Well,
developer
so we'll
in the
look into
fall
this-
to try, to try and put trees there and have them planted to have a growing season. They are not satisfactory to staff. I believe that was shared with everyone. And so that's where we're at. Because this is in the at the ZBA, we don't have that many options right now.
Okay. So stand by what I said. We'll look into that stop work order. That's it.
Okay.
So that's where
We'll
we're at.
attend the next meeting and see where you're at with that,
Right.
hopefully. Or
Right.
hopefully we'll hear something from you before then.
Right, but again, I'll tell you again, they will not get an occupancy permit till you're satisfied. So you don't have to sit waiting by your phone or waiting for a village. It will not happen without your input.
Oh, we're well aware that nothing's happening, so.
Right, nothing will happen until, they will not get an occupancy permit.
I appreciate it. Thanks for hearing us tonight.
Okay.
I just have one comment. Can you post the dates to your website?
To dates of what?
Dates of your meetings?
It's on the
They're
website.
on the website.
2021. So.
I think I looked
I
at it.
clicked on the button and 2021 came up.
Yeah.
So,
Okay.
and then
Okay.
your agenda wasn't posted until today.
That's
Right.
not true.
And
It's- it's-
I clicked on it, it was the wrong agenda. I got the fire department.
I'll double check.
So that's what I'm just
I appreciate
encouraging you that
Okay.
we'll show up, but we also want to make sure you guys are transparent. I served on the board for 12 years, so I know you don't want to get on Illinois policy committees.
Right.
So just encourage you.
Yeah, and I looked at it today, so. All right, so that takes us through that. Anybody else here on anything else? Any other discussion items?
We do have one discussion item regarding the tollway.
Okay.
Back in May of 2019, the village entered into an intergovernmental agreement with the tollway for certain landscaping and fencing around around Vec and Pierce Park. Now that the tollway is getting to the point of restoring those areas after the shoe fly has been removed and the bridge has been built, staff has been reviewing the landscape plan that was part of the original May of 2019 agreement with the tollway and has some concerns with the current landscape plans. Specifically in both parks, in Vec and in Pierce, calls for 3 rows of trees leading up to the fence. And as you recall, the village approved a 16-foot fence that runs parallel to the BNSF tracks in both Vec and Pierce Park. Staff is concerned that if we put in 3 rows of trees on both sides, it's going to encroach into the playing areas and reduce the usable park area. So staff is recommending that only 2 rows of trees go in at both Vec and Pierce Park.
Is anybody opposed to that?
No one is opposed. It's just different than what the original IGA agreement says.
Okay.
Additionally, in Vec Park, there's about a 40-foot area where there's underground utilities that staff has concerns that if we plant trees on top of it, it's going to interfere with those utilities. So it's staff recommendation that we not plant trees in that 40-foot area.
Okay.
In the, I guess it would be the northwest corner of Pierce Park.
So do we have to amend the IGA to do this stuff?
Yes, but the tollway is ready to move forward in beginning some of these landscape plantings and fencing areas, and they want to make sure they have an agreement from the board. I've talked to Bill Ryan, who represents us on tollway issues, and he would plan on codifying whatever this board agrees to for these changes and bringing it back in front of the board.
Okay, go ahead.
If we have 3 rows of trees and we're going down to 2, can we use that row of trees that they were going to give us for anywhere else on the park?
I would have to have, we have some representatives from the tollway here. I'd have to defer to them on that.
Yeah.
Okay.
Good point, Michelle.
Thank you.
Okay.
Lastly, at the far east end of Pierce Park, we have the opening where the box culvert comes into the noise wall. That's an open culvert. We need to fence that off. So we've worked with the tollway and developed a plan that would have surround that area to protect it from people getting into that open culvert with an 8-foot fence that would run north and south, east and west, and a 6-foot fence that would be the same material, which is a Simtech fence that would border the railroad tracks. So we're trying to make it as aesthetically pleasing as possible rather than putting in a chain link fence, and it would match the Simtech fence that runs parallel to the railroad tracks.
So what's the cost differential?
There is no cost differential for the village.
Okay, so what's the reason not to agree to that?
There's no agreement not to agree to it, other than it differs originally from the plan that called for a chain link fence.
Okay, and the tollway's okay with this?
Yes.
Okay. Makes sense to me.
Yeah, I would also note, as if trustees recall that on the north side of the tracks where they covered up an open culvert from basically the community house down to the highway, that created a lot more space.
Right.
And, I think it's a 16-foot fence that's going up. It's a stamped concrete fence that we're all familiar with. It looks pretty nice. I've had requests from a couple of residents for parks and recreation. What are they going to do with that space? Can we put a, walking path in there or something? So I just pass that on to you.
Okay. If you had a chance to drive by there, the fence is in on the Vec Park side, and it's being installed now on Pierce. And in my opinion, it looks pretty good.
It does. Have you seen it from the train?
I have not.
Take a look. Yeah, it's good.
Any other staff reports?
Just very briefly, with Dan Dieter retiring, we've been able to hire a new village engineer. He's in attendance today. His name is Matthew Liu. He has worked in the private sector as a transportation engineer, and then has worked as the senior civil engineer with the village of Lombard for the past 9 years. So we're excited to have Matt on board. He'll bring some new ideas and energy to the division, and he started just this past Monday. Dan has been working through the transition towards the end of the month prior to his retirement.
Welcome, Matt. Anything else?
No, I just want to respond. Our website does have our agenda and does have the.
I looked at it
Well,
today.
I think it's very important because we have members of the press here and.
Yeah, I looked at it today, and I know when we have meetings because I get it off the website.
Correct.
So-
So just wanted to correct the record.
Oh, well.
I'll
Anything
send
else?
them an annual.
You can't be sensitive about this stuff.
I'm sorry, I am.
Just wanted to correct the agenda.
Yeah, I know.
Thank
Okay.
you.
Anything else? Okay, I have a motion to adjourn.
Can I say thank you?
Oh, yeah, say thank you.
Chief King, you and Chief Lilly and Officer Cowell, I had the pleasure of attending the 5th grade DARE graduation luncheon and ceremony. You all were kind, awesome, and did a great job. It's a wonderful program, relevant topics, and it's appreciated by, I know, us parents, so thank you again, sir.
Thank you very much. Other trustee comments? Nope. Motion to adjourn?
Move to adjourn.
Second.
Roll call vote?
Trustee Postuma.
Aye.
Trustee Harlow.
Aye.
Trustee Stifler.
Aye.
Trustee Fisher.
Aye.
Trustee Banky.
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you.